Hello, let's do some factoring review. This will be a two-part video. Part one is what this video is. Our job, factor each polynomial and find all the roots. First question up is a cubic. It's the first thing you should notice. But it doesn't have a constant term, so you can factor out. You factor out, and you get the fact that each term has an x in it. When you factor that out, you'll get x squared plus 5x plus 6 left over, which is a quadratic. And you just factor like normal on that one. X plus 3, x plus 2. Now your job is to find all the roots, so you have to set each factor equal to 0, and you get your 0, your -3, and your -2. Okay, great. Let's now look at the second example. It's a cubic, but we notice there's a constant term, so we can't factor out the start. There are 4 terms. Whenever you see 4 terms, consider factor by grouping. You take the first 2 terms and the second 2 terms, and you factor out what they have in common. The 2 terms that are first have an x squared in common. The 2 terms that are second have a -2 in common. Factor by grouping works when, after factoring that out, you have the same term. If you take an x squared out, you're left with x plus 2. If you take a -2 out, you're left with x plus 2. Now what you consider yourself doing is factoring out the x plus 2. Basically, you're putting together the other 2 terms into one term. And now you factored it by grouping. Of course, we're trying to solve an equation. I'm going to set each factor equal to 0. The first factor is that x squared equals 2. So that's plus or minus √2. And the second factor is -2. Okay, great. Third example. It's a 4th degree. Always notice the degree first. Check to see if you have a constant term, and you don't. So start by factoring out. I guess I'm starting by factor. Yeah, okay, it's okay. I'll factor out that x later. So I see that they have 4 terms. So I'm thinking factor by grouping. Put the first 2 together, put the second 2 together, and factor out the x cubed from the first 2. And factor out the -4 from the second 2. Actually, -4x from the second 2. And look what happens. The first term will be left with the x plus 4, and the second term will be left with the x plus 4. Now consider yourself factoring out that x plus 4. You're basically putting together the other 2 terms. And now you want to finish factoring by taking out that x. When you do that, though, you're left with x squared minus 4. That should stand out to you. That is the difference of cubes. Difference of squares, sorry. And if you have the difference of squares, then that factors as, if your squares are a squared minus b squared, then it factors as a plus b, a minus b. So that's going to factor as x plus 2, x minus 2. Now we're all factored. Going to set each of these equal to 0 and get 0, -2, 2, -4. Okay, great. Number 4. It's a 4th degree, but you only have 3 terms. You're missing the cubic term and the x term. That then screams factor like a quadratic. How do you mean factor like a quadratic? Well, imagine if it was x squared plus 10x plus 9. You would factor that as x plus 9 and x plus 1. Well, okay, you're going to do that. You're going to factor it, but not as x plus 9 and x plus 1, as x squared plus 9 and x squared plus 1. It works out. Factoring like a quadratic. Okay. Now, when it comes to setting these equal to 0, we're going to get imaginary roots. The first one said that x squared is equal to -9, so plus or minus 3i. The second one says that x squared is equal to -1. So plus or minus I. So we have imaginary roots here. Not sure if that's exactly what we were looking for. It doesn't say factor over the reals, and so it's possible that we could have some imaginaries. Okay, great. Next up, fourth degree, missing the cubic and missing the x term, factor like a quadratic. Treat it as if it was like x squared minus 17x plus 72. That would factor as -9 and -8. X minus 9, x minus 8. So how is this going to factor? X squared minus 9 and x squared minus 8. So then take these separately and set them equal to 0. You get plus or minus 3. And then the square root of 8 is 2 root 2. So plus or minus 2 root 2. Okay. Number 6. Fourth degree. Missing the squared term, missing the, you have the fourth degree and you have an x term. So take out the x. What you're left with is a cubic and a 64. That should stand out as the sum of cubes. You have the formula a cubed plus b cubed is equal to a binomial and a trinomial. The way you're going to remember the signs is you keep the same sign as the cubes have, and then you alternate here, and then the last one is always going to be a plus. So a plus b, then a squared minus ab plus b squared. Playing the role of a is x. Playing the role of b, what number do you cube to get 64? It's a 4. So every place you see an a, we put an x. Every place you see a b, we put a 4. And that's how that sum of cubes factors. Now, the quadratic that's left over from the sum of cubes will always have imaginary roots. And so we're going to do that by, I guess we have to go with the quadratic formula. The opposite of b, plus or minus b squared minus 4ac underneath a radical. And 16 minus 64 is a -48. And it's all divided by 2a, which is a is 1. 48 is 16 times 3. And so you're going to bring out the 4 and still have a rad 3. And then you're going to divide each by that 2. And so you get 2 plus or minus 2 rad 3i, along with the other 2, 0 and -4. All right, one more. X cubed minus 27 equals 0. The difference of cubes. And so the difference of cubes formula has a minus b. So it starts off as a minus b. And then the other terms are positive. They have the same terms, that quadratic, except for the signs are different when you have a cube difference and a cube sum. Okay, so we're going to have playing the role of x is just playing the role of a is x, and playing the role of b is 27 is 3 cubed. So 3 is playing the role of b. Once again, though, that quadratic will be imaginary roots when you do a sum of cubes and a difference of cubes. Go with the quadratic formula, -b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac. I'm sorry, that's not 16 minus 4ac. That is 9 minus 4ac. So that's going to be 9 minus 36 is 27. -27. And that's going to then be 3 root 3. And then you'll divide and have -3/2 plus or minus 3/2 root 3. Okay. There we go. There's the fix. Okay. And then don't forget, though, that the other guy's out there, too. So you get x equals 3. Okay. On the next video, we'll do some more. But that's enough for now.